I went on a spree and watched tons of ghost videos. Why? Because I enjoy watching spooky things sometimes, and the mystery of it is appealing. Now, I'm not an explicit believer. When I watch, I dissect the videos to determine how I would fake them if I were to do so. I have probably an above average understanding of video editing, audio engineering, and practical effects. So this is a fun thing for me to do. Some videos are obviously fake, such as basically every video made by YouTube personalities. You know the type, I know the type, there is no need to explain it. Some videos involve subtly flawed effects, such as students or aspiring creatives making earnest efforts to produce creepy videos. Some videos are very well filmed, and the framing is just right to allow people to hide off camera or for practical effects to take place. These videos are often fairly convincing, but they fail under heavier scrutiny and analysis. You can often spot these because they're people who make accounts dedicated to a specific haunting or make their entire online presence about spooky things that happen to them. People often follow narrative structure without even realizing it, so events and the complexity of scares will grow over time as they get better at making these videos. It's classic escalation tied to their skill, competence, and audience. The third category is the oddball category. These are often one-off videos filmed by regular people who usually have nothing to do with creepy content or ghost videos at all. In most cases, there's very little benefit, if any at all, to these people faking videos. It's these videos that are the most interesting to me because they often showcase the most authentically strange events. One thing that I look out for immediately is, what does this person gain from this? If the person making the video is a content creator, it has to have a higher burden of proof by default. Some people will make these one-off spooky videos to direct attention to themselves and their other content. Viewers who see the broadly shared spooky video may convert into regular members of the audience. Plus, the large influx can often stir up machine learning algorithms into a more aggressive promotion cycle for that creator. There is a huge incentive to make a strange video that catches lots of extra attention. If the person who filmed it is not a creator of any kind, that becomes a sort of green flag. These people are often just at work or at home, and something weird happens to them without much reason or warning. The incentive to fake these videos is extremely low, and sometimes it can actually hurt them more than it would ever help them. One good example is a realtor who's filming a video tour and gets interrupted by doors opening and closing. Why would the realtor devalue the house they're trying to sell in such a manner? I would imagine haunted houses are much harder to sell at a normal price, so why would a realtor do this? I have no idea, because there's no good reason for them to do something like that. Another is people driving and catching something on dash cam by accident. I saw one video where a couple swerved into the oncoming lane and could have easily crashed, avoiding something that appeared in the road. Is it really worth a normal person risking their own and their partner's life for the sake of a 5-second clip? Very unlikely. There are a large amount of these strange clips from everyday people. It makes me wonder, what are the odds that every single one of these videos is fake? If you're talking purely statistically, I would argue that it would actually be impossible for every single video to be fake. For every video to be fake, you would have to make a lot of assumptions about the people filming when there's zero evidence to support any of it. These videos are usually filmed by people who don't hold cameras very well. They sometimes involve dogs and children that would be challenging to coach into the right response. Sometimes they are clearly not started with the intent to be weird. And a lot of times, the event itself seems to be deeply disruptive to the person experiencing it. Not in the sense that they're scared or they act appropriately, but in the sense that it actually disturbs their normal existence. It intrudes on their regular environment and their routines, whether that's at work, at home, or somewhere in between. People are extremely unlikely to disrupt their habits and routines without good reason. To assume that all of these videos are fake, you have to assume that every single person filming has the knowledge of how to fake it, the desire to fake it, and the willingness to accept the risks that come with faking it. If they're at work, they risk potential consequences that span much further than the benefits a one-time video would bring. Faking these things also takes a much longer time than it does to just accidentally film them. That time investment is not something everybody is going to want to do, or even be able to do in some cases. So if we can say with certainty that it would be statistically impossible for every video to be fake, how do we explain any videos that are potentially real? Let's also assume that a portion of real videos have normal explanations, such as people who film mundane things that happen in weird ways. Now, this would be things like doors moving because of a subtle draft, electronic failures, bizarre optical illusions, or strange animal calls that people aren't used to. These things can be weirdly timed, yeah, but they are also very normal. We can be thorough and say probably 80 to 95% of weird videos are just mundane phenomena that happened in super odd or creepy ways. Now we are left with the last handful of videos that are super strange, difficult to explain, and not made for any clear reason. Some hospital staff film moving shadows, the realtor video clip I mentioned, work CCTV cameras that capture something odd, dash cams where people swerve to avoid some creepy whatever. How can things that have no other reasonable explanation be explained? This is the part of the video where I go into pure theory and speculation mode. I'm going to give my ideas for what could be happening and my opinions on the reasons for why certain aspects of supernatural things exist the way they do. I'll be pulling concepts from my very first video, which is a mess. I'll try and keep it understandable. I'm going to assume right now that ghosts probably are real, and some funky supernatural stuff probably does happen sometimes. I believe there's too much evidence, too many personal accounts, and it's way too prevalent across the globe to not be real to some degree. I have no reason to totally dismiss the general idea of spirits, so I won't. If spirits are real, then they would have to be a type of existence that is beyond our current understanding and our current ability to accurately measure. They are a largely unexplained chunk of reality and human experience, and they seem to change depending on which part of the world they come from. People who do believe, or who want to believe, are generally the ones that have these experiences. In more spiritual cultures, like most Spanish-speaking countries, these stories and videos are much stronger in presence. Videos that come from Spanish-speaking countries are often way wilder in concept, despite coming from similar contexts and similarly normal types of people. This is a very subtle implication that our attention and our beliefs could have a real impact on the existence of these things. Ghosts come in a variety of flavors. You got your shadow people, your full body apparitions, your pale translucent figures, your possessed objects, and your invisible troublemakers. Why do all of these different forms of the same concept exist at the same time? If ghosts are simply people who have died, why is there so much variation? Why would there be any variation at all? Well, perhaps it's the same mechanism across the board, and the differences are like the way paint can be largely the same and just happen to come in different colors. One of the ideas from my first video is the idea that our consciousness comes from some unknown quantum processes occurring inside the neurons in our brains. We have not mapped consciousness because it exists outside the bounds of what we can measure currently. Any whatever quantum process is going to use some form of energy by default because it has to. I mean, it's not going to create energy out of nothing. And so the biggest question is, what happens to this unmeasurable energy when we die? If this energy is no longer attached to us, then it has to go somewhere. This leftover energy could be what causes the existence of a spirit. And the fact that it only occurs after death would mean that it's a part of us that is no longer linked to our physical body. The more energy left over, the stronger the influence a spirit may have on the world. This would be why places with really nasty histories have more supernatural stories and experiences linked to it. I would also like to clarify that I am saying there is probably a whole separate type of tangible energy that we can't measure. It's not the vague spiritual energy vibe, whatever, that usually gets brought up. I am talking about something real, like electricity or heat. Something that right now is only felt, but with the right tools can be measured accurately. This is a lot of theoretical nonsense from a madman, so I'll break it down simply. Our brains contain an undetermined type of energy, something real. Our consciousness is a result of that unknown energy. Because of the law of conservation, that energy doesn't just disappear when we die, so this energy ends up lingering somehow. If it doesn't have anywhere to go, then you end up with a spirit. That's my theory so far. This energy that spirits exist as is subject to change and transform based on the conscious attention of living people. If we do not see them or believe they exist, then they don't. This could explain why stories of hauntings typically escalate, and why spiritually inclined people say that filming or interacting with spirits is a bad idea. By giving a ghost attention, you give it the very same energy it needs to exist. Because it exists using some much more fundamental form of energy than science can measure right now, they can influence the real world in ways that typically involve other forms of energy. They mess with lights and electronics, which is electricity. They mess with temperature, which is heat. They push things, which is kinetic energy. They make noises, which is acoustic energy. And they manifest visually, which is light energy. All of these things that ghosts do involve varying forms of energy that exist in the real world that we already interact with. If this theoretical energy is what creates conscious thought, then you wouldn't really need a physical body to experience consciousness. It may be more unstable or more flexible, but a ghost could possess a certain type of less structured consciousness within this theory. This could explain why you have videos of them reacting to living people, but only in more simple ways that are considerably more basic than speaking with a living person. Depending on how it manifests, this could also explain the differences ghost enthusiasts describe when they talk about the difference between residual hauntings, and intelligent hauntings. Residual hauntings are just that theoretical energy going through motions it did when it was contained inside a brain. It's lost too much form to maintain conscious thought, so it does what it is trained to do, so to speak. Intelligent hauntings would be when the energy retains enough form to still produce thoughts, even if those thoughts are unstable or basic or repetitive. Now, the next best question is, why are trauma and tragedy so intertwined with ghost stories? What does tragedy create that normality does not? There might actually be some merit to the idea that spirits are people who died with regrets, unresolved issues. It could be that the act of not accepting your own death sort of continues your existence in a way we can't even fully comprehend. The internal state of denial or regret, or maybe any strong desire, could anchor this theoretical energy more solidly than a more natural cause of death, to put it as simply as possible. It's not that natural deaths aren't also sad, but they are a lot easier to accept in the long term. You're just gonna have to trust me when I say I know this personally. This could be why sudden deaths are often the ones associated with spirits. There's no time for the person to come to terms with their own demise, so the theoretical brain energy is more likely to linger or persist beyond life. Tragic or highly emotional deaths might also disrupt the process and make it difficult for spirits to, move on, whatever that actually involves. I have no idea. Wow, Isaac, what a casual way to explain the afterlife. Thank you. I credit autism for this delivery. So the last aspect of ghosts I want to touch on is why they tend to exist in private, abandoned, or isolated places. I think it's probably a result of less conscious interference, which means a more stable existence for an already unstable form. If our living consciousness could potentially feed spirits, in a way, then that means that too many different people with different beliefs makes it hard for anything like a spirit to exist. Places that people don't go very often, and times that most people are not awake, such as abandoned buildings at night, means that there is minimal interference to alter a spirit's existence. In places that are largely believed to be haunted, this is somewhat circumvented because the popular belief fuels whatever theoretical energy is lingering around. Also, another point, ghosts are likely more active at night because there's less light to deal with and less consciousness from living people. And there's less light, less effort would be required to manipulate existing light and become visible. Makes perfect sense that they would be more likely to be seen in the dark. Actually, I lied. I have two more aspects to talk about. Why do ghosts have a habit of scaring people? Well, if they are fed by attention, then what's the strongest form of attention a living person can give? That's fear. If a ghost can trigger a fight or flight response, that is likely the easiest and most potent form of attention to get when you're an invisible existence. If you can scare somebody, that person's focus is almost entirely on nothing but you for that duration. It's extremely effective, and it might even have lingering effects if the person thinks about it after the fact. This means that most spirits will default to scaring people because it's both easy and effective. Not all will try to do this because individual variance is a thing, but this could explain why the norm is to give living people nightmares. My actual last aspect is why cameras could capture things we don't see, and why very young children show a pattern of seeing these spirits. Cameras and very young kids actually have something in common here. Both of them see reality through an unfiltered lens. Cameras capture what is objectively there, without any interference from beliefs or intentions that consciousness brings with it. Very young children are not developed enough to start forming their own conscious beliefs yet. They are simply absorbing what they see and what is around them, which makes them more susceptible to spirits who would be hindered or changed by beliefs. This could also be why animals are also more susceptible to seeing ghosts. They don't actively think about whether or not ghosts are real, because they don't have the capacity to think about something that abstract. If it exists, then it does. If it doesn't, then they never consider it. Honestly, the fact that animals react to things we can't see should be proof enough that something weird is going on. So, in essence, ghosts are real, and there's a theoretical way to explain why they are. Every type of energy on Earth has something in common. There's probably potential, and I'm always right. Sometimes I wonder if I ramble too much, but whatever. Doesn't matter. Ghosts might be mysterious and interesting, but it's more important to focus on the life you're living currently rather than any potential afterlife there could be. If you build a life you can be proud of when you're gone, no matter how many ups and downs you face, then anything that comes after your life will be that much easier to handle.